Hey everybody, what's going on? It is James here with Crypto Common Sense, and I have your Bitcoin / cryptocurrency update for Monday, March the 30th. So we just had our weekly close about 15 minutes ago. I'm going to go into that chart in detail. Also going to walk through some of the smaller time frames, some of the altcoins, and of course, we're going to take a quick look at the S&P 500 to try to get some type of idea of what the stock market might be doing over the coming week. Before I jump into the content for this video though, please do me a huge favor, hit that thumbs up button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and of course don't forget to click that bell icon to get notifications when I release new updates. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you check the description for links where you can join my Patreon as well as my private Facebook group. And just a heads up on the Patreon, I noticed they have some kind of weird deal where it looks like they charge on the 1st every month. So obviously, if you're watching this video on the 30th and you sign up for Patreon on the 30th, you're going to get rebilled in 2 days, which is a little bit wonky. That's the reason I set up the private Facebook group. It's going to be a paid Facebook group. So if you don't want to get into this Patreon thing and you want to join the Facebook group, the updates are going to be the same. Just for one, I'll post it in Facebook. For the people that are on Patreon, post the exact same thing on Patreon, right? So I noticed that today. I thought that was really weird, and I don't like the way they're doing that billing. So I'll probably be focusing on moving people over to that Facebook group over time. All right. With all that being said, let's talk about some charts. So the first chart I want to take a look at is actually going to be the CME chart. Of course, everybody that watches this channel already knows that I'm a big fan of gaps. I like to pay attention to gaps, and I have a firm belief that most gaps fill. In the case of Bitcoin, all daily gaps have filled up to this point, except the 3 on the screen. There's a tiny little gap up around 11.8. There's another gap, an obvious gap right here at 9,060. And now with today's new open, we have another gap sitting up around $6,600. When these fill, we don't know. Will they fill? We don't know. But I don't personally feel like they're going to be filling anytime soon. With the global environment and with what I'm going to talk about in a few minutes with the stock market, I personally feel like we have more downside. That being said, I want to have the gaps there. I want to keep them in the back of my mind, just like I did the gap down around $4,000. You know, while price was moving up, it took 9 months to get back to that level, but I never forgot about it. Also, I had hypothesized that the CME was playing a bigger role in this market than a lot of people were giving it credit for. We still don't know if that's the case, but there is evidence supporting that. And I really haven't talked about this in a couple of weeks, but guys, this was very, very textbook. If you take a look at what happened on the CME, when price moved up to the 200 moving average initially, it was a very clear rejection. It would have been a very easy short to take. In fact, I did short it. It was around $8,500, fell all the way down to about $7,700. Okay, moved up above it. Was a little wonky through here. Somebody might have been able to play this bounce for a couple percent, but definitely didn't move off of it like I would have, expected it to. Came back down, almost looks like some type of fake out before moving up off of it. Once it lost the 200 daily moving average on the CME, it came up for a bearish retest. And right here on this second candle, when this second candle closed, that was a pretty easy spot to say this is probably going to go down, right? And of course, we all know what happened next. It dropped about 50% over the next week, all right? So I am going to pay attention to the CME chart, and I do keep this in the back of my mind. Where is the 200 moving average at? Right now, it's sitting up around $9,000. Doesn't mean price is going to instantly, get glued to it like a magnet. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that, I want to watch that as that starts curling down and gets closer to price. It wouldn't shock me at all eventually for us to come up and retest that again. That might be months down the road, okay? And by then, that 200-day moving average might be down around $6,000 or $7,000. We just don't know. But it is something to keep an eye on, okay? And when price gets back toward it, we want to watch it, or at least I'm going to watch it and look for my next play off of that, okay? Let's jump over to a Coinbase chart real quick. And in this case, we're just going to take a look at the weekly chart for Coinbase. So here's our weekly chart for Bitcoin on Coinbase. And you can see that we had two very, very cliche retests of this resistance. This resistance was at $6,908. last week or 2 weeks ago, depending on how you look at it, came up, hit it, got soundly rejected. RSI had hit this yellow line at the same time. Boom, closed way down here. Again, this week, I talked about this on Patron a couple of days ago. Price moved all the way back up to that resistance. This RSI was again sitting right up here, slamming into this yellow line. It got rejected, pushed it back down, and RSI curved back down. Okay, so this did not look bullish. None of this price action looked bullish to me. This simply looked like a lower high. Remember, in a downtrend, you go down, up, and then the next stop in a downtrend, if this is indeed a downtrend, is going to be a quote-unquote lower low, which means that this old low back here of 3,800 not so much is in trouble as much as this low here that's closed. It's $5,300 close would be the low that I would be watching, okay? If we put this on a line chart, it's going to be a little bit easier to see. So this is the low that I think we need to take out next. Down, up, down, right? So does that mean that I'm instantly going to jump in any short positions? It doesn't. Like I've talked about the last couple of weeks, I'm really not interested in trying to, open any swing shorts here. I do think that if it does start to move up, it could be some type of explosive move. I definitely don't want to be caught on the wrong side of that. So for now, the trades that I've been taking have all been short-term day trades, trades where I'm getting in and out in 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, that type of trade, right? Not the type of trade where I open it up and go to bed with it. We're still sitting on top of the 200-week moving average, so as long as we're on top of it, there is still some hope that this was the bottom. I do not think so. If I had to lay odds, it's a 95% that this was not the bottom, 5% it was, right? And those, of course, are just numbers I'm pulling out of thin air, right? But that's just my personal opinion. I do think we're going to go back underneath this 200-week moving average. I do think we're going to take out this low, right? If we're looking at RSI in past bear markets, right? And the 2015 bear market, you won't be able to see it on this chart, but back in around January 2015, RSI on the weekly just barely tiptoed into the oversold territory, and that marked the bottom. In 2018, it tiptoed into the oversold territory, that marked the bottom. We have not done that yet in this particular cycle, and I think especially with everything going on globally, I think it would be it would surprise me if we don't make it back down in that oversold territory. Also, I happen to have these hash ribbons on there. I haven't been looking at these a lot, but I have talked about these the last couple of videos. They have been a pretty accurate symbol in the past, and they are not yet screaming buy. Okay, I'm going to be very clear that just because this flashes a buy doesn't mean I'm going to buy Bitcoin, but I do think it's interesting, and I do like the fact that they have been pretty accurate. Again, even this one right here, though it wasn't the actual bottom, still would have been a really good buy, right? Still could have got a good 50% move on that. So, I am going to keep them on there, and I'm going to, see if they pan out this time. Maybe if they pan out this time, I'll start giving them a little bit more credit, okay? But that's what I'm saying on the weekly. It just looks like a very, very cliche bearish retest for Bitcoin. If we go over to a 3-day chart, I have not looked at one of these in a couple of days. Let's pull it up. Wow. Okay, so it couldn't have got much more perfect than this. You can see RSI came up here and got smashed right at that blue horizontal line. That blue horizontal line was actually a line of resistance / support, right? You can see it back here. In 2018, it was acting as support. You can see here in 2019, it was acting as resistance time and time again. And this time, boom, price moved right back up to it, touched it, got rejected, and started to move back down. All right. This candle here looks like it opened on March 28th, so it won't be opening or closing for another day or so, right? But so far, it looks like a very cliche, again, bearish retest of a broken support. Okay. If we take a look at a daily chart for Bitcoin, all right. So let's get rid of some of these lines. All right, so most of these red lines are played out. I just haven't removed them from the chart. But the lines that still matter to me, obviously this green line matters to me. It's around $6,400. It was a support line / resistance that I was watching. We're back underneath it, so I want to watch that again. But more importantly, I'm watching this death cross, right? Is this going to be a fake out? Maybe, maybe not. It doesn't look like it's going to be a fake out so far, right? It's a confirmed death cross. The 200-day moving average was moving down. The 50-day moving average was also moving down. That's as bad as it gets, right? So I am going to watch this because if price suddenly starts to skyrocket back up, I want to see, is it going to be a bearish retest of these moving averages, or is it going to be something more? Also, we've got this red sloping line. Still going to keep an eye on that. I would be surprised if we move up that high, but it's there. I want to leave it there until I feel like it's no longer valid, right? Right now, I think the line to watch on the daily is going to be this red line down here. This is actually the trend line that goes back to the latter part of 2018, okay? So if this moves down here and finds support on top of this trend line, to me, that would be bullish in nature, and that would be down somewhere around $4,800 to $5,000, right? So I will be watching that line with some interest. As far as this yellow line in RSI goes, this is again the trend line that goes back to 2018. We broke through it, came right back above it. So if we come down and start finding support on top of it, again, that would be a signal to me that maybe it's time for me to look at some long positions. All right. So that's what I'm seeing on the daily. Just bear news, bear news, and bear news. Okay. If we jump over to the total market cap and look at a monthly chart, right? Same thing. This red line is the line that I'm watching. We had come down below it, but we're back above it. So as long as March closes above that line, there is still some hope for crypto before it starts, completely going lower. If we lose this line, that's what would make me think that we're going to go down and retest this bottom down here. By the way, if you missed the last video where I talked about this green line, this was the actual lowest close of 2018, okay? 2019. It was actually January of 2019 where the market bottomed out, if you will, as far as monthly closes go. So we basically came down there and tested it, which is what happened in 2015. In 2015, in January 2015, price put in a low on Bitcoin, not the total market cap, but Bitcoin. And then about 8 months later, it actually came down and tried to retest it before it started its bull market. So maybe this is a good sign, right? We don't know yet. Right now, though, I'm watching this with quite a bit of interest. If we look at a horizontal line here, we can see that obviously it's below, right? Its resistance here. It's above its support down here, and it's above its sloping support. So right now, this is kind of the range, if you will, that I'm watching, and I want to see what happens inside this range, okay? Again, monthly candle, so it's going to close in less than 48 hours from now. And finally, if we take a look at Bitcoin dominance, right? This is that upward sloping trend line that we had going back to January 2018. And it does look like it may have met some resistance here. If we look right here, this was basically a double top, okay? Came back up, tested the neckline. And if this plays out like textbook technical analysis, we should, in theory, get a move down off of this. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that Bitcoin will lose fiat value. It doesn't really have any indication at all on that. It just simply means that if this plays out, that alts should gain ground against Bitcoin. Whether they do or not, I'd be careful. Right now, like if it wasn't for everything crazy going on, on the news and the media and things like that, I would say, yeah, probably going to happen. But, I don't know. I really don't know. It seems like, every time a big piece of news comes out here recently, because emotions are running so high, it really messes with the stock market. And then the stock market has this ripple effect where Bitcoin is basically just, almost like a mirror image these last few weeks of what stocks are doing. But yeah, technically speaking, this looks like a bearish retest to me, and that alts should, in theory, gain some ground. Okay. Speaking of the stock market, oh boy. All right. So I believe it was 3 or 4 days ago, I did a post on my Patron, and I talked about, what I felt about the stock market. One of the things that I pointed out to members was that, a lot of people were getting bullish. In fact, the Wall Street Journal came out, did an article saying that the bear market was over and that we were starting a new bull run with this candle, which was, in my opinion, irresponsible journalism, but it is what it is. When I look at this is what I saw, guys. I saw a 200-week moving average that acted as support back here, acted as perfect support right here in December of 2018. And now I see a 200-week moving average that is doing the opposite right here. It's acting as resistance. And we all know by now, or at least those of you that watch the channel and do any trading, we all know what that's called. When something breaks through support and comes up to test it from the underside, it's literally called a bearish retest because it's bearish in nature. It's typically a signal that that was your dead cat bounce and you're getting ready to move lower. So when I look at this weekly chart, it's really hard to be bullish on the stock market, okay? Just is. Now, somebody on Patron said, wait a minute, what about this bullish engulfing candle? And first off, I'm kind of happy to see this because, you know, so many people in crypto will label a candle a bullish engulfing candle when it's not. This is what a bullish engulfing candle actually looks like. You have a candle that took out the previous low and took out the previous high. That's a bullish engulfing candle. And it is, by textbook definition, obviously bullish in nature, hence the name. But in this scenario, the problem I have is where that wick landed, right? If this was a bullish engulfing candle way down here and the 200-week moving average was up here, right, then I would say, hey, it's getting ready to move up and test that average. In this case, it just looks like a bearish retest. And again, you know, who knows? Anything could happen, obviously. But for me personally, when I see that, experience has taught me not to get too excited on a bearish retest, not to get caught trying to catch a falling knife, okay? So to me, that looks very, very bad, okay, for the S&P 500. And again, the reason I'm talking about the S&P 500 when this is a crypto channel is because Bitcoin is mirroring the S&P 500 very, very closely, all right? If we take a look at a daily chart, so we basically have this upward sloping trend line here. And when it broke through this back in February, it came up right here on March 4th, bearish retest, right? Exactly what I just talked about. Failed, came back down. And this almost looks like on March 26th that it was another retest of that resistance, which so far has failed. The other thing you're going to notice about this chart, the orange line and the blue line. The orange line is the 50-day moving average. The blue line is the 200-day moving average. And we are about to have a death cross on the S&P 500, just like we just had on Bitcoin. And again, that's a very bad signal. Unless you're a bear, then it's a good signal. But I really don't think there are that many people right now that are rooting for the stock market to go down. Even the bears, you know, have to be somewhat concerned about their family members and their friends who are losing huge portions of their life savings and their retirements right now. You know, I had a good time being a bear with crypto the last 9 months, making good money being a bear. And I didn't feel too badly about it because I felt like, you know, most people were either using proper risk management or they're just, you know, these arrogant moon boys who probably weren't investing that much to begin with. You know, they're out there investing a few $1,000s and trying to get rich. But in the case of the stock market, it's really hard to be like super happy about it moving the direction that you thought it was going to move, in this case down, because everyone I know, for the most part, 95% of people, 99% of people, are not traders. So their retirements are tied up in that. My brother's retirement, my sister's retirement, my aunts and uncles' retirements, my friends' retirements, right? So I can't really sit here and celebrate because there's nothing good about watching my friends and family lose 30% of their investment, right? But I still think it's going down, guys. I definitely don't feel good about the stock market. I feel like, you know, this right here was a dead cat bounce. Maybe it goes a little higher, maybe not. That 200-week moving average, you know, should prove to be a pretty good line of resistance, I would think. But this death cross is bad news. The last time there was a death cross in the stock market was back here. It was in December of 20, not the entire stock market, but the S&P 500. It was back here in December of 2018, and what followed that was, of course, this massive dump where it dumped about 15%. Now, in crypto, we're like 15%. Phew, that's nothing, man. But in stocks, that's a really big freaking deal. Okay? 15% is massive. So if this thing does end up falling 15% from where it's at, we'll put it down around 2100, right? Which, if you look, pretty strong level, of, I would call support back around that. It's almost perfectly, matching up with this old level down here. So I definitely think that, it could head down to that level. And I still think, I talked about this last week, I'm still not ruling out, if things get really bad and they can't, get this economy to turn around, I'm still not ruling out a move back down to this 15 to 1600 area on the S&P 500. Again, talking about stocks because it's affecting Bitcoin so much, right? That would be down around the 50% retracement level, okay? So think about that. I want you guys to take, your thinking caps and put them on for a second, right? I'm all about technical analysis. I'm all about reading these charts because the whole idea of technical analysis is outside events, known events are already priced in and they show up in these charts, okay? And I think that's what we're seeing right now. But a lot of people are looking at this price of, for example, some stocks are down to like, levels they were at 30 years ago, and Bitcoin, of course, is down to, under $6,000, and people are like, oh my God, it's such a great deal, blah, 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 right? You have to ask yourself, compared to what? What do you mean it's a great deal? What makes it a great deal? Because it's cheaper than it was? That's like going to Walmart, seeing an item that used to be $100 and now it's 50, and you say, oh, I'm going to buy that. It's a great deal. Getting home and going, wait a minute, I don't need this, right? It's not a great deal if you don't need it. And it's not a great deal in investing if it can still go down. Well, everything could still go down more, but if it's likely to keep going down, it's not a good deal, right? And if the stock market is going to go down another 20 or 30%, I have to think that Bitcoin is probably going to go down with it. And the way it's looking right now, and these estimates change every day, but the way it's looking right now, a lot of these estimates coming out are saying that the U.S. economy is basically going to be shut down for another 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, right? As this thing is shut down, right now there's still people who had savings. Right now there's still people, who are semi-prepared for this. But as this shutdown goes longer and longer, and more people lose their job and lose their source of income, they've got to start cashing out their 401ks. They've got to start cashing out their investments. What happens when they cash those out? Of course, that's selling. Selling is what? It's sell pressure. What is sell pressure? It's supply. What does supply do in a market? It drops the price. Okay? We're not going to see a huge demand. We're not going to see the public rushing in to buy stocks, right? When they get the stimulus check for $1,200, do you think their first thought is going to be, oh boy, I'm going to go buy me some S&P 500? I don't think so. With some people, it's going to be, I'm going to go buy me a new iPhone, because that's just how people are. They put their wants in front of their needs. Some people are going to go out and buy a new TV, right? But a lot of people are simply going to squirrel that away because they're scared right now. They're terrified of what might be coming, and they should be, right? They should be worried about what's coming because we don't know. And if this thing goes on too long, we could find ourselves in a type of recession that none of us have ever experienced before, right? It's a little crazy out there. So when I look at that and I think about it from a logical perspective, if people are starting to have to cash out these investments and they're having to, live off of that money, I expect more downside. More downside is, good for a bear. And realistically, guys, it's not bad for a bull either. It just means you have to be patient, right? At this point, with Bitcoin being down to $5,900, you have to ask yourself, do I even care if it goes down, right? But for the most part, I want this to keep going. Crypto, not the stock market. But I want crypto to keep going down because it's a better deal. I can buy more. I know it's easy to get worked up and anxious and think, oh God, please stop falling. Please stop falling. If you're underwater especially, it's like, oh my God, please, please, please. But turn that off, because if you are underwater, you've already made a bad investment. There's not a lot you can do about that. But the lower it goes, within reason, we don't want it to go to zero, obviously. The lower it goes, the better you can do with cost averaging. I'm not telling you to cost average, by the way. I'm not your financial advisor. I'm saying mathematically, the lower it goes when you cost average, the more it brings down your cost average. Okay? So for example, if Bitcoin goes to, just hypothetically, $3,000, and you've got, one Bitcoin right now that you paid $9,000 for. Well, if it goes to 3,000 and you buy one more, now your cost average is what? It's 6,000, right? You got 9,000 plus 3,000 is 12,000 divided by 2 brings your cost average down to 6,000 bucks. So me personally, I'm being patient. I'll continue doing my little scalp trades and whatnot, but really, as far as position trade goes, I'm not even close to being interested in buying any cryptocurrency. Okay, none, because even when other charts are looking good, for example, Ethereum looked good to me the other day. If the global economy as a whole is shitting the bed, I think it's going to be unlikely that, some random crypto suddenly skyrockets. I'm not saying they won't have dead cat bounces, but I'm talking about a long-term play, okay? So Ethereum is what I was talking about looking good. It's actually sitting here inside this weekly channel that I drew up a few months ago. And if we look at this, it's making this series of higher lows. And right here, price made a lower low, which means that this is actually weekly bullish divergence on a weekly chart, right? It's unusual. It's not very, likely that you see that on a major crypto usually. But there it is. So I was really tempted. I thought, man, I might actually, take a nibble on this. I didn't. I was waiting for the weekly close, and I'm glad I waited because guess what? The weekly close closed underneath the friggin' trend line. So I'll just wait, right? Because again, even if this bounces a little bit, if Bitcoin's going down, crypto's going down, stocks are going down, I just don't see this thing suddenly starting a whole new bull run. Maybe a bounce, but that's about it. So just sitting back, going to continue being patient, and look for the spot where I want to get my money in good. Okay. So with all that being said, guys, my timer has disappeared. I don't know how long I've been talking. It feels like a while, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up there. Please remember that while I do trade full time, I'm still just some guy sitting in a spare bedroom. So you should always do your own due diligence. You should always seek out professional investment advice from a professional investment advisor before making any type of investment. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure and give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And of course, don't forget to check the description for links where you can join my Patron, as well as that private Facebook group. Again, please remember, if you're watching this video and it's the 30th or the 31st, don't join the Patron, because what's going to happen is it's going to bill you like that day, and then on April 1st, it's going to turn around and bill you again. So if you do want to join the Facebook group. Right? If you're watching this after April 1st, then you're good to go, because the next bill cycle won't be until May 1st. All right? This is James with Crypto Common Sense. Thanks for watching the video. And as always, please remember to trade safe.